I did not intend to stand before an alien emperor. That mistake began, like most catastrophic ones, with a wrong door. I was a junior systems engineer assigned to Port Meridian, a neutral trade station perched on the edge of 3 competing empires. Humans were still newcomers to the wider galaxy, useful, adaptable, and tolerated, but not powerful enough to throw weight around. We fixed things. We optimized. We stayed out of politics. At least that was the plan. Port Meridian was a maze of decks and corridors layered over centuries of expansions. Signage updated in real time depending on species, translation overlays flickering constantly. I'd been rerouted to perform diagnostics on a malfunctioning atmospheric stabilizer near the Imperial wing, a restricted sector usually off-limits to non-citizens of the Varelian Empire. My wrist console buzzed. Access granted. That should have been my first warning. The door slid open. I stepped through, and the air changed. It was heavier, richer, laced with unfamiliar pheromones that set my nerves on edge. The chamber beyond was vast, a cathedral of living crystal and gold-veined stone. Thousands of eyes turned toward me at once. Silence fell like a blade. I stood frozen on a circular dais, surrounded by tiered balconies packed with alien nobles, warriors, and dignitaries. At the far end, elevated on a throne grown rather than built, sat a towering figure crowned in bioluminescent armor, the Varelian Emperor, and beside him, slightly behind, but impossible to ignore, stood his daughter. She was tall, even by Varelian standards, with opalescent skin that shifted color with her mood, elongated ears swept back elegantly, and eyes like molten silver. Regal, dangerous, beautiful in a way that made my chest tighten painfully. I swallowed. Sorry, I said, my translator scrambling. Wrong room. A murmur rippled through the hall. The Emperor's gaze fixed on me. It felt like gravity doubled. You have entered the trial of ascension, he said, his voice resonating directly in my bones. No one enters by accident. I absolutely did, I replied, because honesty had always been my best defense. I was supposed to be fixing an air stabilizer. The murmurs grew louder. Some sounded like laughter. Others hunger. The Emperor leaned forward. The trial selects those worthy of standing before my daughter as potential consorts. My heart stopped. What? The Emperor's daughter turned her head, studying me with open curiosity rather than offense. Her eyes narrowed slightly, not dismissive, but assessing. I'm human, I said quickly. From Earth. I don't belong here. The Emperor's lips curved in something approximating a smile. Then you will entertain us greatly. A glyph ignited beneath my feet. Before I could protest, the floor dissolved into light. I woke in a circular arena under an artificial sky, my console gone, replaced by a simple band around my wrist pulsing with alien script. Around me, other contestants stirred, massive reptilian warriors, insectoid tacticians, beings of living stone and plasma. Every one of them looked like they could snap me in half. A voice echoed across the arena. The trial of ascension tests strength, intellect, and spirit. Victory earns the right to petition for the hand of Princess Kilira Viral. A holographic image of her appeared above us. She looked different here, less formal, more intense. Her gaze found me instantly. I raised a hand awkwardly. Still a mistake. She tilted her head. Something like amusement flickered across her features. The first trial began without warning. Gravity surged. Contestants collapsed as the field intensified, crushing down with escalating force. I dropped to one knee immediately, lungs burning. My muscles screamed. This was impossible. I was human. Baseline gravity adaptation at best. Then training kicked in. I adjusted my breathing, shifted my stance, distributing force through my joints the way we'd learned for hygiene maintenance. I focused on efficiency instead of power. Others tried to brute force it. One by one, massive forms slammed into the arena floor, unconscious or worse. I stayed kneeling. Barely. When the gravity field disengaged, I collapsed flat on my back, gasping. Only 3 of us remained standing. The Emperor's voice returned. Unexpected. The second trial was mental. A labyrinth of shifting corridors projected directly into our minds, rules changing mid-thought. Varelians valued adaptive intelligence, pattern recognition under stress. This was my element. I stopped trying to solve the maze and instead mapped how it reacted to observation. Feedback loops. Predictive illusions. It wasn't a maze, it was a conversation. I answered it. The walls dissolved. I stood alone in a field of light. For the first time, the crowd went completely silent. Princess Kilira rose from her seat. The final trial came at dusk. Combat. I faced the last remaining challenger, a Varelian noble, twice my mass, armored and armed with a plasma halberd. I had nothing but a lightweight adaptive shield and my own body. "This is where you fall, human," he said. "Probably," I admitted. "But I've survived worse." He attacked like a storm. I didn't try to match him. I dodged, redirected, used the arena's terrain, forcing him to overextend. Varelians prized honor in combat, predictable patterns, ritualized strikes. Humans survived by improvisation. When he finally overcommit, I slammed my shield into the ground, overloading its output. The resulting pulse disrupted his armor long enough for me to sweep his legs and pin him. The arena held its breath. I released him immediately. "I yield," he growled, stunned. "He has won." The Emperor stood. Princess Kilira descended into the arena, her presence commanding silence. She approached me slowly, studying me as if seeing me for the first time. "You did not seek this," she said softly. "No," I replied. "But I don't quit once I'm in something." Her lips curved upward. "Fully this time." "Then speak, human," the Emperor commanded. "Why should my daughter consider you?" Every instinct screamed to plead, to flatter, to bow. I didn't. With respect, I said, meeting Kilira's eyes, she shouldn't. I didn't come here to win her like a prize. I came here because I walked through the wrong door. If she wants someone who chose this path, that's not me. The hall erupted. The Emperor's eyes narrowed dangerously. Kilira raised a hand. Silence returned. She stepped closer until I could see the fine luminescent patterns beneath her skin. "You refuse the reward." "I refuse to claim ownership over a person," I said. "If she wants to talk, to decide for herself, I'm here. If not, I'll leave." A long pause stretched. Then Kilira laughed. Not a polite laugh. A genuine, ringing sound that echoed through the chamber. "For the first time," she said, "someone stands before me without desire for power." She turned to her father. "I choose him." The Emperor stiffened. "Daughter, not as a consort," she continued, "as my chosen." Shock rippled through the court. The Emperor studied us both for a long moment. Then, slowly, he inclined his head. "So be it." They gave me a suite overlooking the Imperial gardens, living bioluminescent forests drifting in zero-G spheres. Kilira visited that night, without guards or ceremony. "You upended centuries of tradition today," she said, leaning against the balcony rail. "Sorry," I replied. "I have a talent for that." She smiled. "You did not fear us." "I did," I admitted. "I just didn't let it decide for me." She turned serious. "Do you understand what you've done? By choosing you, I challenge the hierarchy of the Empire. species boundaries, bloodlines. I never wanted to cause trouble, I said. Her eyes glowed softly. Then why do you stay? I thought about Earth, about Port Meridian, about the small, predictable life I'd planned. Because, I said, for the first time, someone saw me as more than useful. She stepped closer. I see you, she said simply. Over the following cycles, we talked about science, governance, war. She was brilliant, burdened by expectation, desperate for something real. I challenged her ideas. She challenged my assumptions. The court watched. Some whispered treason. Others whispered hope. When the emperor summoned me again, I expected exile or execution. Instead, he offered a choice. Remain, he said. Not as consort. As bridge. Advisor. Symbol. I looked at Kilira. She nodded, hope and fear intertwined. I accepted. Years later, humans and Varelians would mark that moment as the beginning of the Accord of Equal Stars. Interspecies unions became alliances, not conquests. Trials became invitations, not traps. As for me, I still fix things. Just bigger ones now. And sometimes, when I pass through an unfamiliar corridor, Kilira squeezes my hand and says, smiling, "Careful. You never know what door you might open by mistake." I did not intend to stand before an alien emperor. That mistake began, like most mistakes that reshape entire civilizations, with a wrong door. Port Meridian was a neutral station orbiting a dying blue star, a place where treaties were signed, secrets traded, and wars quietly prevented or ignited. Humans had only earned a foothold there in the last decade. We were tolerated, valued for adaptability and technical skill, but never truly respected. We fixed what others broke. We kept our heads down. I was a junior systems engineer, contracted to maintain environmental systems across the lower rings. The work was boring, safe, and far away from politics, until my wrist console flashed access granted over a doorway that absolutely should not have opened. The signage glitched between 3 languages I didn't recognize. I hesitated, frowned, and muttered, "That's not right." Then the door slid open anyway. I stepped through, and the air changed. It wasn't just temperature or pressure. It felt heavier, charged, like the space itself was watching me. Light refracted strangely through towering crystalline columns, and the floor beneath my boots shimmered like liquid gold. Thousands of eyes turned toward me. Silence slammed into the room. I stood at the center of an immense amphitheater. Tier upon tier of alien nobility watched from balconies carved into living stone. At the far end, elevated on a throne grown from bioluminescent crystal and ancient bone, sat a being so imposing my instincts screamed at me to kneel. The Varelian Emperor. He was enormous, armored in living metal that pulsed faintly with internal light. His eyes were twin suns of controlled fury and intelligence. Beside him stood someone else. She was tall, elegant, unmistakably royal. Her skin shimmered in pearlescent hues that shifted subtly with her emotions. Her silver eyes were sharp, curious, and alarmingly focused on me, the Emperor's daughter. I swallowed hard. I said, my translator kicking in late. Sorry. Wrong room. A ripple of sound passed through the chamber. Confusion, amusement, outrage. The Emperor leaned forward. No one enters the Hall of Ascension by mistake, he said, his voice resonating through my bones. You stand before the trial. My stomach dropped. That's unfortunate. The Emperor's daughter tilted her head slightly. Her gaze was analytical, not hostile. This is a trial? I asked. Because I'm not. The trial selects those worthy to stand as potential consorts to my daughter. the Emperor continued. The word consorts echoed painfully. I'm human, I said quickly. I fix air recyclers. The Emperor smiled. Then you will either die quickly, he said, or entertain us greatly. A glyph ignited beneath my feet. Before I could protest, the floor dissolved into light. I woke in an arena beneath an artificial sky that simulated a dying sun. My wrist console was gone, replaced by a glowing restraint band etched with alien symbols. I wasn't alone. Around me stood creatures out of nightmares and legends, towering reptilian warriors, insectoid tacticians with blade-like limbs, crystalline beings that refracted light with every movement. Each one radiated confidence. I radiated panic. A voice thundered across the arena. The trial of ascension tests strength, intellect, and spirit. Survive, and earn the right to petition Princess Kilira Viral. Her holographic image appeared above us. She looked different without the weight of ceremony, focused, intense. Her eyes found me immediately. I raised my hand. Still a mistake. Something like amusement flickered across her face. The first trial began, without warning. Gravity surged. It crushed down on us with savage force. Massive competitors buckled. I dropped to one knee instantly, lungs burning, vision tunneling. This was impossible. Humans weren't built for this. But we were trained to adapt. I widened my stance, controlled my breathing, distributed strain through joints and muscle groups the way High-G technicians were taught. I stopped fighting the force and worked with it. Others tried brute strength. They failed. Bodies slammed into the ground one by one. When the gravity field disengaged, only 4 of us remained conscious. I collapsed flat on my back, gasping. The Emperor's voice carried a hint of surprise. Unexpected. The second trial was mental. The arena dissolved into a shifting labyrinth projected directly into our minds. Walls rearranged themselves mid-thought. Paths changed when observed. Fear, doubt, and arrogance were weaponized. The others charged forward. I stopped. This wasn't a maze. It was a system. I observed its reactions, mapped its feedback loops. When I stopped trying to escape and instead predicted how it responded, the illusion destabilized. The labyrinth shattered. I stood alone in a field of white light. The silence from the audience was absolute. Princess Kilira stood from her seat. The final trial began at dusk. Combat. My opponent was a Varelian noble clad in ceremonial armor, wielding a plasma halberd that hummed with lethal energy. I had a lightweight adaptive shield and no weapon. This is where you fall, human, he said. Probably, I replied, but not quietly. He attacked with overwhelming force. I didn't match him. I moved, redirected momentum, used terrain. Forced him into patterns, ritualized, honorable strikes that I could anticipate. Humans didn't win by strength. We won by refusing to fight the way our enemy expected. When he overcommit, I overloaded my shield into the ground. The pulse disrupted his armor long enough for me to sweep his legs and pin him. I released him immediately. I yield, he said, stunned. He has won. Princess Kilira descended into the arena. She stood before me, close enough that I could see the shifting patterns beneath her skin. You did not seek this, she said softly. No, I replied, but I won't run from it either. The Emperor spoke. Then explain yourself. Why should my daughter consider you? I met Kilira's eyes.
She shouldn't, I said.
Not because I'm unworthy, but because she's not a prize. If she wants to speak to me as an equal, I'm here. Otherwise, I'll leave. The chamber erupted. Kilira raised a hand. Silence fell. Then she laughed, bright, genuine. For the first time, she said, Someone stands before me without wanting to own me. She turned to her father. I choose him. The emperor stiffened. As consort. No, she said. As my chosen equal. After a long moment, the emperor inclined his head. So be it. The court was divided. Some saw me as a threat, others as a curiosity, a few as a symbol. Kilira and I spoke often after that about governance, war, science, and fear. She carried the weight of an empire. I carried none of it, and that made me dangerous in a different way. When unrest broke out among border worlds, it was my suggestion, cooperation instead of suppression, that changed everything. Humans had survived not by domination, but by collaboration. Kilira listened. The emperor summoned me one final time. You have altered the course of my empire, he said. Not through force, but through perspective. I braced myself. Remain, he said, as advisor.
Bridge.
Symbol of what the empire may become. I looked at Kilira. She nodded. Years later, historians would record that moment as the beginning of the Accord of Equal Stars, when conquest gave way to cooperation and strength was redefined. As for me, I still enter rooms I don't belong in. I just make sure I leave them better than I found them. And sometimes, when Kilira smiles at me across the stars, I remember all of it began with a mistake.